On April 16, 1945, the last confrontation on the European front began, the Battle of Berlin. The fighting would end on May 2nd, with the capture of the German capital by Soviet forces, the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany, and the end of the Third Reich. But first, if you're not yet subscribed, sign up and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever there's a new video. With the success of D-Day and the liberation of France, Western Allied forces were advancing towards the heart of Germany. In early 1945, American, British, and French troops crossed the Rhine River and approached German industrial regions. In the east, the Red Army had liberated much of Eastern Europe and was at Germany's doorstep. After the bloody Battle of Kursk and the summer offensive of 1944, the Soviets quickly advanced through Poland and reached the Oder River, the last major barrier before Berlin. Berlin was the capital of the Third Reich and symbolized Hitler's power. Capturing the city would be a severe blow to the Nazi regime and a symbol of victory for the Allies. Stalin was determined to take Berlin before the Western Allies, both to secure a post-war strategic position and to claim the prestige of capturing the enemy capital. To achieve this, the Soviet offensive involved a force of almost 3 million men, 6,250 tanks, 7,500 aircraft, and tens of thousands of artillery pieces. The operation was led by Marshal Georgy Zhukov, commander of the 1st Belarusian Front, and Marshal Ivan Konyev, commander of the 1st Ukrainian Front. The Soviet plan was to encircle and capture Berlin in a pincer movement. Zhukov would attack from the north, crossing the Oder River, while Konyev would advance from the south, aiming to surround the city and cut off German escape routes. German defenses were significantly weakened due to heavy casualties suffered in years of war. Troops in Berlin included soldiers from the Wehrmacht, Waffen-SS, Volkssturm, Citizens Militia, and Hitlerjugend, Hitler Youth. Berlin's defenses were organized by General Helmuth Weidling. Despite their hopelessness, the German forces were determined to fight to the end, using the city as a fortified stronghold. On April 16, 1945, the offensive began with a massive artillery bombardment, the largest of the war, against German defenses on the Oder-Neisse line. This bombardment was followed by a tank and infantry attack. Zhukov's forces faced stiff resistance on the Seelow line, a series of fortified hills about 90 kilometers east of Berlin. The battle at Seelow was extremely bloody, but the German defenses were eventually overcome by Soviet numerical and fire superiority. After breaking through the Seelow line, Soviet forces quickly advanced towards Berlin. By April 25th, the city was completely surrounded, with Zhukov's and Konyev's fronts meeting around the city. The fighting in the streets of Berlin was intense and brutal. Soviet forces faced fierce resistance from German soldiers and civilians, resulting in hand-to-hand fighting and widespread destruction. Despite the desperate situation, German forces continued to fight. Waffen-SS divisions and Volkssturm units defended strategic points such as bridges, government buildings, and important intersections. Soviet artillery bombarded the city incessantly, as soldiers advanced street by street, building by building, facing fierce resistance. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler, taking refuge in his bunker, committed suicide. Before his death, he named Admiral Karl Donitz as his successor. Hitler's death plunged the Nazi leadership into chaos. Many senior officers fled or committed suicide, while remaining units continued to fight without central coordination. On May 2, 1945, General Helmuth Weidling, commander of German forces in Berlin, surrendered unconditionally to Soviet troops. The remaining forces in the city ceased resistance. The formal surrender of all German forces was signed on May 8, 1945, marking the end of the Second World War in Europe and considered Victory Day on the continent. The human losses were enormous. Estimates suggest that Soviet forces suffered around 81,000 deaths and 280,000 injuries. German forces suffered approximately 92,000 deaths and 220,000 injuries. Furthermore, Tens of thousands of German civilians died in the fighting. Berlin was devastated by fighting. Buildings, infrastructure, and homes were destroyed, and much of the city was in ruins. The civilian population faced shortages of food, water, and shelter. The capture of Berlin marked the final collapse of the Nazi regime. Germany was divided and occupied by Allied forces, leading to the formation of West Germany under Western Allied influence and East Germany under Soviet influence, marking the end of the Third Reich. The conquest of Berlin and the subsequent division of the city symbolized the beginning of tensions between the Western and Eastern blocs, a prelude to the Cold War. Berlin became a focal point of the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. You can watch this and other videos here. If you liked it, support our project, leave a like and subscribe, and thank you very much.